I've been losing my mind ever since watching The Substance, and the only thing I can think of is I need to watch this shit again and again and again. Oh, and I'd love to try it. Unironically, like, give me a younger, more beautiful, more perfect version of me so I can shove myself into a dark closet like when I was a little boy struggling to come to terms with people calling me paneleiro, which is the Portuguese version for fat.
Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself?
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, I'm Eric. I have a stutter and a deep obsession with The Substance. And if you're not new here, what up, whores? Have you ever wanted to become younger, more beautiful, more perfect, but lacked the black market drugs? Well, look no further. The Substance is here to change your life 1 week at a time. Written and directed by Coralie Fargyod, The Substance is hands down the best movie of the year. Bold statement to make when there's, 2-3 whole months left in the year and a lot of new releases, including a never-ending stream of Walmart Christmas movies. But I'm saying it. Nothing will make me feel the same way The Substance made me feel. Utterly insane and content. Coralie Fargyod is a French filmmaker known for her directorial debut back in 2017, Revenge, a gory ride that sees Jennifer exact revenge on 3 male predators with incredible execution. If you haven't seen it, The Substance follows Elizabeth Sparkle, played by Demi, a former Oscar winner actress turned TV fitness instructor, who, after getting fired at the age of 50 because, well, she's turned 50, gains access to a black market drug that promises to offer you a younger, more beautiful, more perfect version of you. The rules are laid out for her, and what follows is a bonkers ride that takes the concept to its maximum potential. Like, whatever you think Coralie may do with this concept, she goes above and beyond. She exceeded my expectations completely. It's a thrill ride, or should I say, joyride, that will gross you out, but also make you think about what the film is actually trying to say. At its core, this is a feminist movie that explores the way women age in a society that places value specifically on their fuckability and reproductibility, as well as the pain women inflict upon themselves as a consequence of that environment. It's a movie that demands more than one watch. I cannot stress this enough. The more times you watch it, the more details and meanings you find behind every single shot. Coralie said that every scene is carefully planned and executed, and I can vouch for her. It absolutely makes total sense. It adds up. It's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. Every watch is a different experience, and every person's takeaways will be slightly different, very clearly influenced by your own personal experiences. And although this film specifically explores women's experiences aging in a society that cares only about how much it wants to fuck them, it also speaks to other more broad experiences that everyone can kind of relate to in some way or another. Me? Body dysmorphia all the way, baby. So if this sounds of interest, but you want to watch it first, then this is your chance to click out of this video, go watch the movie, find a cinema near you, give them your money, and then come back and let's discuss. And if you have seen it, or you're not a big fan of body horror, because this is a very gruesome, disgusting body horror movie, well, more like a comedy. If you're a gay or a girly that gets it, if you get it, you get it. But if you're not into that, then stick around and let's discuss The Substance. I will say majority of the reviews have been very positive. There have been some negative ones, mostly from men. So there's something to be said about that, but we're not going to get into that right now. We're going to get into The Substance because I'm obsessed. But before we get into it, make sure you subscribe to my channel, click that bell notification so you never miss a future upload from me. Also like this video and comment down below. And yeah, let's get started. Now, as I said, the movie is full of meanings, metaphors, and analogies, and we could dissect every single one of them, except you'd have to be able to pinpoint every single one of them. You'd have to catch every single meaning she's trying to put behind this movie. I surely can't. So I just wrote down everything that I remember and how I can kind of relate it to the experience of the character, but also broader experiences of other people. Starting with the opening shot, we see an egg and someone injecting a green substance into it, which causes it to split into 2 similar eggs, though one could argue that the new egg looks slightly rounder, more pristine, cleaner. And this is, of course, foreshadowing of what will happen to our main character, but I'd argue that the egg here also symbolizes women's fertility, their ability to reproduce, which, according to some men, J.D. Vance, is the only way they hold value in our society. We then cut to a sequence of an Elizabeth Sparkle star being installed in the Hollywood Walk of Fame before we see a time lapse of it showing the progression of the star. You know, at first people take pictures with it, but it quickly becomes just another meaningless piece of the sidewalk, culminating with a man dropping food in a slushie on it and then rubbing it aggressively with his foot, trying to clean it. Doesn't work. And it sort of mimics the career of Elizabeth Sparkle, which we meet next, played by Demi Moore, who delivers an incredible performance, arguably Oscar-worthy, although, as we know, with very rare exceptions, Oscars and horror movies don't gel. I will always be pissed off about the Toni Collette, Lupita Nyong'o, Mia Goth snubs. But back to the movie. Elizabeth is a former Oscar winner actress turned popular TV fitness instructor who, at the age of 50, gets fired from her job because she's not young and hot anymore. And anyone who says that about Demi Moore clearly does not want to have sex with women or is blind. Now, the person who fires her is Harvey, played by Dennis Quaid, and something Coralie Fargyat does really well, reminiscent of Revenge, is she gives us these very close-up shots of men as they talk and eat, which is the true horror of the show. There's a scene when he's sucking shrimp out of its carcasses, and I can't help but see this as the visual representation of the patriarchy's unabashed, out-of-control consumerism that sucks the life out of everything around them, mostly women, and leaves behind empty carcasses, swiftly moving on to the next thing. Coralie, I love you. Elizabeth, who actually overheard Harvey say that women's fertility starts declining at the age of 25, which is a callback to the egg at the beginning and the way society deems women valuable only as long as they're fuckable and able to reproduce, gets into a car accident after seeing a billboard of her show, more specifically her face, being torn down to be replaced by someone younger, someone hotter. Now, at the hospital, it's a miracle she has no injuries, and a nurse tells her that she is a good candidate before wishing her the best. Unbeknownst to her, he drops a pen drive with a number on its back and a message that says, "This changed my life." And he drops it on her iconic yellow coat that I can, again, probably relate back to the egg. She opens a pen drive and watches a presentation for The Substance, a revolutionary product that with one single injection unlocks your DNA, starting a new cellular division that will release a new version of yourself, younger, more beautiful, more perfect. And I can just hear all the gays over 40 lining up to get this because, mama, those Botox injections are expensive. And though it gives you a younger version of yourself, you must split time between the two, 1 week each, which in the grand scheme of things seems like a reasonable compromise if the prize is that you get to be at your prime, yet again. Elizabeth throws the pen drive away initially, but after 4 martinis at a bar by herself, she returns home, looks at herself in the mirror, and with tears in her eyes, calls the company and orders The Substance. They give her an address for a P.O. box, send her a card by mail. She retrieves the contents from this P.O. box, and it's this box, and that's when the fuckery starts. The box's contents are revealed: the activator, which you only use once, the stabilizer, which you use every day, the switch, which you use once a week, and food for the Matrix and for other self. Elizabeth being the Matrix. Hesitant, Elizabeth performs the activation in the bathroom, a white, tiled, cold, empty space, which Coralie Fargyat said was intentional. She said, "The white bathroom where all her transformations occur serves as a cocoon where she confronts herself, almost like an experimental chamber. It's a mental space, and I wanted it to feel very abstract, stylized, and almost empty." There's also a lot of nudity, which is, of course, intentional. Coralie also said, "Most important for me and her," speaking of Demi Moore, "was grasping the purpose of these scenes, how and why the nudity was serving what the movie was all about, how it's a way to show our vulnerability with our own bodies, and how the way we look at the flesh can be so different when you're alone in your bathroom, or you're Sue in front of the camera and everyone is looking at your ass." Sue being, you'll meet her soon enough. So, Elizabeth injects the activator, which kickstarts a very painful-looking process in which her pupils split, then showing us 2 eyes inside of her eye socket, before her back splits open from her neck all the way down to her tailbone to expel another, younger woman. Think of Alien, but instead of a lot of blood, it's amniotic fluid. The woman stands up and is played by Margaret Qualley, who also gives a standout performance in this. Her name is Sue, and she is, for all intents and purposes, the perfect woman. And there's something quite interesting the movie does. The relationship both these women have with the mirror in the bathroom, the only thing in this space apart from the shower, almost like the mirror is either a weapon Elizabeth uses to scrutinize her body, find flaws, degrade herself in her mind, or a tool Sue uses to admire every corner of her body. Kind of like how our relationship with our body image changes according to how we feel on the inside. Because any sane person would argue Demi Moore looks fantastic. She's beautiful, but her perception of herself is tainted by what people tell her she looks like, or by the industry rejecting her solely because of her age, or, as we'll see later, tainted by the comparison she makes in her mind with Sue. Sue then quickly learns the importance of stabilizing her body, a process in which she must insert this really long, big needle in Elizabeth's back and extract a fluid that she then injects into her own body once every day for 7 days. The alternative being severely debilitating pain that presumably culminates in her death. One thing to note in the message from the substance is that they are one. It's a recurring theme throughout the movie that Elizabeth and Sue are the same person. So like, while Sue is awake, living life, she has Elizabeth's consciousness in her body, while the real Elizabeth's body is slowly being fed the Matrix food for the duration of the week. And when they switch and Elizabeth springs to life, it is her consciousness going back into her body that has just spent a week living as Sue. They are the same person. They are one. So Sue auditions to be the new Elizabeth Sparkle and gets the role straight away. She is the embodiment of sexy and hot and desirable, so much so that Harvey has no problem accommodating her need to have every other week off to take care of her sick mother. She goes into Harvey's office and all we see is a bunch of quiet, almost robotic suited men, a reminder that in this industry and society at large, they are in control. And Sue, as lively and innocent as she is nothing more than a puppet for them. The cinematography and sound design really sell the vision that Sue is perfect. When she's on screen, we're almost enveloped in these bubblegum pink tones, close-ups of her toned body inside lycra bodysuits, or even the way that she drinks a Diet Coke, or the close-ups of her mouth slightly open, saying Sue in a seductive way, almost like she's the embodiment of purity, of men's desires, the most fuckable woman, who incidentally acts almost like a naughty schoolgirl, which plays into men's fantasies so perfectly, yet also disturbingly when you think about 50-year-old men like Harvey at home, pleasuring themselves, all while an innocent-looking Sue blows kisses after the show directly to the camera, directly to them. Coralie Fargad is putting these men on blast, and I live for it. As expected, things start getting out of control. Elizabeth becomes a recluse in her own home, further evidenced by this big poster she has of her days as Elizabeth Sparkle, the superstar, tucked away in her living room, the picture shot in blue, muted tones, contrasted by the ginormous billboard of Sue right outside of her apartment's window, showing her in a provocative position with pink, vibrant colors out in public for everyone to look at and fawn over. It's like you're hiding the old woman to present the young woman to the audiences. And the more Sue is in control, the more she wants to be in control. Now, one day, she overextends her 1-week stay by a few hours because she wanted to sleep with a hot guy, and honestly, girl, same. But the consequences are serious. Elizabeth wakes up with a very old, deformed finger, the result of Sue taking more than she should have. And a call to the same previous people that sold her the substance clarifies that there is no going back to what has been taken. The damage to her finger is permanent, but no more damage is needed as long as the balance is respected. This is also when Elizabeth starts disassociating herself from Sue, acting as if they're different people and not just Elizabeth ping-ponging from one body to the other. This is further exacerbated by a run-in she has with a nurse from earlier, this time in his real body, a very old man, and he tells her that he has to remind himself that he is also worthy of living, and that the more he switches, the lonelier it gets, and then asks her if she started eating away at her yet. This leaves Elizabeth disconcerted because Sue has quite literally started. Wait, not Sue. Remember the voice said on the phone, they are one. There is no she. Elizabeth is Sue. Sue is Elizabeth. They are one, right? In an effort to remind herself that she has value as Elizabeth, she reaches out to a former classmate of hers who she bumped into earlier in the film, someone that told her she is still the prettiest girl alive, and they agree to go on a date. And this is one of the most heartbreaking scenes of the film because Elizabeth gets ready and is about to head out the door when she glances over at Sue's billboard right outside of her apartment. This brings back all of her insecurities, and she rushes to the bathroom to fix her makeup and add a scarf to cover up her cleavage. But just another glimpse at the billboard on her way out, and she runs back into the bathroom to fix herself up even more and more and more until she aggressively rubs her makeup off her face in a fit of anger. Anger because she doesn't look like Sue. Anger because compared to Sue, she feels unworthy of going out and living life, despite having a date with someone clearly besmirched by her. Elizabeth is now a full hermit, never leaving the house, instead spending her time watching TV and eating. And this eating, this binge eating, feels almost like her way of punishing Sue because she knows what that'll do to her self confidence, ingesting food without caring about her figure or her health. And it works. Sue has a nightmare that she has a chicken drumstick stuffed under her skin, one she has to remove through her belly button, the body horror coming in strong in these scenes. And this kind of kickstarts an internal war between the two women. And this is the main conflict of the story, right? Elizabeth is acting like two completely different people now, unrelated but at war with each other, because even though she's both, her personality almost develops separately depending on the body she's inhabiting. As Elizabeth, she grows resentful of Sue and her beauty and her youth. And as Sue, she grows resentful of the lack of care Elizabeth has for herself and begins seeing her as pathetic, someone that doesn't deserve as much time as she does, if all she's going to do is sit around all day and eat. And though it's mostly speaking to women's experiences aging in society, I also see this as a perfect allegory for addiction. The stabilizing liquid is the drug Elizabeth must consume to exist in the world as Sue, who, despite being the exact same person, acts in completely different ways, almost like it's not the same person. And when the switch happens, or in an addict's case, they sober up, they don't remember their actions. They blacked out with no memory. And the more intense the addiction, the harsher the consequences on the body, which they feel when they're sober. Her skin becoming deformed is akin to, for example, the physical consequences of addiction, be it withdrawal pains, significant aging of the skin, weight loss, deterioration of the appearance over time. And it's a vicious cycle that requires external support because an addict can't remove themselves from the situation and see it for what it is, a spiral down to self-destruction. Sue's popularity skyrockets, and she's given the opportunity to host the network's New Year show, a very prestigious position that is only saved for the best of the network. And being such an incredible opportunity, it's going to demand more and more of Sue, more of her attention, more of her time, more of her commitment. We all know where this is going, right? To inject myself with something that literally creates another human being out of myself, I would follow the instructions very carefully. I would not go over the time, especially given that she's seen the consequences of using up more time as Sue than she's supposed to. I would religiously follow the rules. But in saying that, if we take this into consideration as an addiction, as a sort of a disassociation of who Elizabeth is, we can also understand how somewhere along the way she loses control. She's not in control anymore. She can't help herself. It's an addiction. It's an illness, and we should treat it like an illness. So no victim blaming here, but Sue girl, you in danger. Sue continues borrowing more and more days than she's supposed to, and as she continues extracting more liquid from Elizabeth's body, we see the wound becomes infected, but Sue can't help herself. Just one more day, she tells Elizabeth's unconscious body. One more day, she tells herself, really. And when Elizabeth wakes up, she screams in horror. Half her body is now deformed, including her face. What was once a deformed, easy-to-hide finger is now irreversible damage you couldn't hide from anyone. She calls the number again, angry, and tells them that she wants out. She wants to end this. And they tell her, okay, you can terminate the experience. You are the Matrix, you are in power. However, if you do that, you will have to go back to living as just yourself. However, the damage is done. What has been taken cannot be undone. So Elizabeth, stuck in this body forever, refuses the termination. One thought of being just her for the rest of her life gives her the heebie-jeebies. No ma'am. Cold feet. I just gotta respect the balance. But her mental health continues declining, highlighted by an incredible performance of a sequence of Elizabeth cooking food grotesquely, all while watching Sue's interview, where she acts like a ditzy bimbo, throwing jabs at Elizabeth's career and their age gap, something that Elizabeth does not take well at all, berating her for her attitude and saying that she got all of her beauty from Elizabeth, who now looks like one of the Hills Have Eyes family members. She's at the peak of her disassociation, unable to recognize she is both women. Everything that Sue does and says was actually Elizabeth that said and did. There is no she, they are one. And after an incredibly gross binge that culminates in her finally covering the window so she doesn't have to look at Sue's billboard anymore, Sue wakes up horrified at the state of her apartment. It looks like Hoarders Extreme Edition, but worse. And much like Elizabeth, Sue is also unable to recognize that this was her doing. It was her, stuck in a different body, resentful of how beautiful and young and perfect Sue is, a punishment out of spite. And so it becomes almost indistinguishable who is the addict here, because one is using the stabilizer to extend their time, and the other one is using food to punish the other. They're both using addiction to punish each other instead of working together, because the disassociation is crazy. And I saw that a lot of people had issue with the fact that these two women seem to not remember what the other one does, and they seem to be completely different people. But that's the point of the film. The point of the film is that she goes into such a deep, dark mental state that she completely loses perception of who she is or what is happening around her. She completely disassociates into two different personas depending on the body she's inhabiting in the moment. There is no she, but Sue has had it, and faced with the biggest opportunity she's had as the new young bimbo in town, Sue extracts as much liquid as she possibly can from Elizabeth's body to last her until New Year. Come New Year's Eve, and Sue realizes that she's run out of stabilizer liquid. She calls the number in a panic, and they tell her that she's drained the body of all the liquid. She must switch so Elizabeth's body can regenerate the liquid. That was the purpose of the switch the entire time. You can't be perfect Sue without Elizabeth. Get it? Panicking and out of options, she switches, and we see Elizabeth's final form. She's completely deformed, unrecognizable. She's monstrous, and finally decides to get the termination formula to end the experience. She calls a number, they send her the termination liquid, she retrieves it, drags Sue's body into her living room to finally put her out of her misery. I guess accepting the fact that she's gonna live the rest of her life in this deformed, grotesque body. And when I said it's a comedy, it's a dark comedy, I mean the way she drags Sue's body from the bathroom all the way to the living room, I think there's a gif making the rounds on Twitter. It's genuinely so funny. But as she's injecting the termination formula, she looks at the New Year's show billboard outside of her window and regrets it instantly. She needs Sue to do this, to have this moment that they've been waiting for so long. So she panics and switches. But because she already injected the termination formula, their connection was severed. The termination has begun, we presume. So when she switches, Sue wakes up. But Elizabeth is also awake. She's effectively split herself into these personas that she developed when she was going from one body to the next, and now she's two. And Sue, seeing the termination formula, realizing that Elizabeth was gonna kill her, goes on a murderous rampage and viciously attacks Elizabeth, beating her to a bloody pulp. Very gruesome, very bloody, very gory, very intense. With Elizabeth now dead, Sue prepares herself for showtime, uneasy about what just happened, and hopefully wondering how she's going to continue living when she quite literally needed Elizabeth alive if she even hoped to get stabilizer. But without the stabilizer, surely she's in the process of dying already, right? Yep. Backstage, her teeth start falling off. She dodges the male producers who once again tell her to give them a smile. Another reminder that all of this self-inflicted pain means nothing to this horde of gross old men who would trade her in for a younger woman in a heartbeat. She rushes home, remembering she kept some of the substance. And yes, she's gonna do exactly what I wanted her to do the entire film. She's gonna inject herself again. I just wanted to see what would happen if you injected the formula into a byproduct of the formula, you know, because Sue is already a byproduct of Elizabeth, so we can only assume her body isn't fully human, genetically speaking, or she wouldn't need some liquid from the original body to stabilize her. But she does it anyway, and again, painful process, and she gives birth to a grotesque monster who the film calls Eliza Sue. And this is the definition of a deformed monster. Arms growing out of her back, teeth in the middle of her chest, and Elizabeth's pristine face on her back, stuck in a horrified open-mouth expression. The monster grabs the portion of the poster with Elizabeth's face and sticks it on her face. A heartbreaking realization the monster has that Elizabeth was always good enough. The entire time, Elizabeth was all she needed and wanted to be, if not for the pressures and voices in her mind telling her you're not good enough because you're old. And the last 10 minutes of the movie are revolting, insane, crazy, bizarre, and glorious. And truly, I love Coralie for having the guts to do this, for having the nerve to actually end the film like this. She gets to the stage, lights up, the poster falls off her face, revealing her monstrous appearance to the audience. She then pukes a breast from her eye socket, a reminder of when the casting agent said of a competent dancer, "It's a shame her boobs aren't in the middle of her face instead of that nose." People start screaming, horrified, calling her a monster. One man even attacks her, smashing her head into smithereens. Her body then grows another head, which looks even worse than the first one. Her arm then breaks because her body is incredibly fragile now, and she starts spraying blood all over the room as we listen to various misogynistic comments throughout the movie. And this whole time, Eliza Sue is telling them that it's still her, she's still the same person, and you can hear the heartbreak, the pain behind her voice, the desperation. Because in the end, sacrificing everything, quite literally, the audiences still end up rejecting her, because no amount of change will ever be enough to appease everyone, much less undeserving men who don't actually appreciate you for who you are, but how fuckable they deem you to be. She escapes the building and explodes mid-running, her body now just completely decaying. The only thing left intact is Elizabeth's original face and a bit of meat. The face crawls to the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and she looks up to the sky full of stars. And I guess in a weird way, the editing tells us that she's finally content, she's at peace. She's done everything she could, and it's her time. Or maybe it's just a heartbreaking moment that she realizes it would have never been enough no matter what she had done. Wouldn't have mattered what happened with Sue anyway. She was always going to end up completely drained, consumed by this industry, and then left to rot in a corner. The face melts into the floor onto her star, and the next day, it's wiped away by a floor scrubber. The end. And this, my friends, is The Substance, an incredible body horror movie that says so much to so many different experiences. It explores so many topics, so many themes, and I'm sure that there's a lot of other details that mean something. For example, the name Sue, I think, is an anagram for use. When Sue starts misusing her time, misusing her body, the word use also highly associated with addiction, the way that we use drugs or other products to get us by, to make us feel better, to make us feel worthy, to make us feel something when we feel dead inside. But also the way that mirror plays a big part in this movie, the way that mirror conditions Elizabeth's idea of herself, the way that she punishes herself because she doesn't look like Sue, despite not having to look like Sue. They're two different people. They shouldn't look the same. There's just so much in this film that it would be impossible for me to pinpoint every single detail, because I'm sure that there's a lot that I've missed, but that's where you guys come in. If there's anything that I missed or anything that you thought was worthy of talking about, please make sure to leave it in the comments down below. Let's start a conversation, let's spread the word, and let's all order The Substance. I would kill to order it. I'm not even joking. If it ends with me dying like Eliza Sue, so be it. You know, who fucking cares? Life's here to live to its fullest. And that might mean that I learned nothing with the film, but also it's a movie, not real life. If The Substance was real, I'd use it. Would you? And I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this video, make sure to leave it a like down below, subscribe to my channel, click that bell notification so you never miss a future upload from me. We have really exciting things coming up in October. We're back to trash season. Love is Blind is back. Can't wait. But also we have Heartstopper. I'm also going to do a quick Ellen comeback review because her comedy special was something. And yeah, until then, stay safe, stay sane, stay stupid, and stay stuttering. Bye, guys.